Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining me on a new episode of Mrs. Pinky Thoughts. I am your host, Nicole Pinkston, aka Mrs. Pinky. Before we get started, I'd like you to check around the outline of this channel. It has all of my social media spots at the bottom, especially consciousconservativemedia.net, where we teach conscious conservative principles, and we have training and blogs that you can see. If you like and subscribe to this channel, and you like what you see, please make sure to drop a $10 donation either at my PayPal or my Cash App above. Today's guest we have is Ms. Lisa Watson. How are you doing today, ma'am?
Hi, Miss Pinky. Hi, Nicole. How you doing?
I'm great. Today's topic, we're talking about your transformation from a social justice warrior into a conservative. And we're going to talk a little bit about your journey and what you are doing now with your newfound discovery. Can you let our audience know a little bit about yourself and, what it is, your story?
Okay, well, I'm trying to make it concise. It's a sort of a complicated story, and I'll try and keep it short. But my name is Lisa Watson, and as it says on my Twitter feed, which is where we got introduced, that I'm a former liberal, former social justice warrior, and I've become a free market education activist. So for the most part, the number one theme that I am trying to press into with conservatives is the need for us to focus on school choice. And that's a tool through which we will be able to resolve or address a lot of the other issues. So my background is I'm a pretty much a Midwestern girl. I was born and raised in the Midwest. Pretty unremarkable background. I think sort of average. My mom is divorced. I'm one of four siblings. But for college, I did move to Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles from the Midwest. And while I was there, I got introduced to some different ideas. Now there's a name for it, and people are saying that colleges are indoctrinating kids. But at the time, I didn't have a clue. I had never heard of it or ever been warned about the indoctrination into liberalism, socialism, everything liberal. And I sort of took to it like a duck to water. I was a natural advocate. So getting introduced to a lot of these concepts was compelling to me. And I became very radically liberal. I ended up graduating from college back in Kansas City. So when I transferred back to Kansas City, when I became a senior, I needed an internship, and I had a work study at the Women's Center. So at the Women's Center, you're getting indoctrinated into a lot of feminist ideas. So someone there said, I can get you an internship, and they got me an internship at Planned Parenthood. So now I'm going from being indoctrinated into a lot of feminist ideas. I'm now getting indoctrinated into the pro-choice framework. Now, in hindsight, I see that each time I was getting indoctrinated or exposed to a new idea or a new concept, that I was building a worldview. So we hear a lot now about the conflict of worldviews. But again, at the time, I wasn't familiar with this. So in college, I'm going to rewind a bit. I'm sorry. In college, when I was in Los Angeles, the first trigger for this shift for me was a professor. I had a course called Comparative Religions. And in the course, the professor said that all religions are the same and that they are a tool that humans use to explain the universe. And I remember being really startled because coming from the Midwest, I had never heard an adult say something like that. I had never heard an adult say that all religions were the same. And I remember thinking, is he saying that Jesus is the same as Zeus and Apollo? That was really startling for me. And it caused like cognitive dissonance for me for a long time. And being in that environment, it put me in a lot of doubt and confusion about what I had been taught. So now we fast forward, I'm back in Kansas City. I'm in college. I'm doing my work study at the Women's Center. I get my internship at Planned Parenthood. But at the same time, I had a part-time job and I was working for the telecom industry. And I ended up becoming a union steward. So now this is another worldview that we are not recognizing that this is a largely socialist worldview. So I'm getting a feminist worldview, a pro-choice worldview, a socialist worldview, and I was no longer considering myself a believer. I was considering myself an agnostic, and then, at some point, an atheist. So all of these worldviews were going to build my personality in the way I frame the world. Fast forward again, I get invited to a party. One of my friends lives in this really great neighborhood, and he told me that the house that I love, there was a house in this neighborhood that I always said that was my favorite house. He said, we're going to go to a party there for New Year's Eve. So we go to this party, and the lady that owns the house, she happens to be the president of the ACLU. So we start talking, and then we just hit it off. And she said, you should join our board. So within a week or so, I was on the board of the ACLU. And then I quickly took on other roles over the course of about more than 8 years. I joined the board. Then I became the affirmative action officer. And then I became the president of the Kansas City chapter. And then I founded the Racial Justice Task Force. And then I joined the national board in New York City. So for me, all of these worldviews were working for me. Everything made sense. I was pretty liberal, pretty radically liberal. As I said, I was pro-choice. I attended the marches in DC. Everything right up the ladder made sense. And then one night, I came home just to chill and Netflix like a lot of people. And I was going to watch a movie, and it said right on the guide channel that this movie was going to come on. But that movie didn't come on. Instead, there was another show that came on, and the name of that show was I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Well, I thought that was the funniest name. So I said, I'm going to watch this. And the gentleman on the show, I learned his name later. He announced. No, this is Frank Turek.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I got into my phone mixed up.
Oh, no problem. And I had never heard of him. But he announces that he can prove the existence of God and he doesn't have to use the Bible. And I remember saying, go for it. And over the course of this show, he really starts unraveling a lot of my worldview. And I remember grabbing a piece of paper and starting to take notes. It was something in particular he said about Einstein, that Einstein had actually manipulated his general theory of relativity. This is the theory that he got a Nobel Prize for. And he had manipulated it, and he later admitted it, that he had changed the numbers because they weren't giving him the outcome that he was basically wanting. And I remember saying, what? He's Einstein. So I started scribbling notes, and I was taking notes, and a lot of the things that he was addressing were things that I had believed, that he was telling me that these things were not true, they were not accurate, and that they were false, and a lot of them were actually hoaxes. So by the time the show was over, I was feeling lightheaded. I actually was dizzy. I had turned on the side of my bed, and I had put my hand on my forehead, and then I heard a voice. And the voice said, you're being lied to. Crystal clear, like it was inside of my head. And I'm thinking back over everything that this man has just covered. And I'm thinking that the people he talked about lived over the course of centuries. There was no way they could all get together and have a hoax. And then the voice said that the God of the Bible is true. And Jesus is his son. When Satan fell, he took a third of the angels, and they created all the other religions because they want to be worshipped. Well, this thought has never occurred to me in my life. And I just remember thinking that I need to respond. And all I could come up with was, I got to look into this. And that was it. I had never had a supernatural experience before. I wasn't even a believer. So it wasn't like I had a bias to make up that I'm hearing from Jesus. But I had this man's name. I had the name of this show, and I had these notes that I had scribbled. And so it just was like I tell people, it was a piece of thread. And I just started pulling on this thread. I started looking up the man. I found out he has a series called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I found that he has a book. I found this topic called apologetics that I had never heard of. And then I had these notes that I could now confirm the things that he had said. And I found out, that it was that the things that he said were true. And that Einstein actually admitted that he had changed the theory of relativity. And so I call it the great unraveling, because it was like a ball of thread that the more I pulled on it, the more everything unraveled. And it took a while. I mean, I tell people it could have been a year and a half, 2 years that I was sort of, being challenged. And I had built up such a system around me that was confirming. When you live in a certain bubble, you constantly get confirmed the things that you already believe. So one by one, the dominoes started falling, and I had to change my mind on all of these things that I used to believe.
Awesome. So, as you were thinking about these things, were there any things that were pulling you in certain directions? Was it social media? Did you start reading? Where did you get your information from? Where did you start researching?
Well, zero was social media. I actually had never wanted to be on social media. I don't have a Facebook account, Instagram, nothing. I literally have been on social media for about 9 months right now. And this was years ago. This was not within the last few years. This was like 6 years ago or longer that this happened. So I've been out of it for a little while. So primarily I would, go to YouTube, and I put in the guy's name, and then a lot of his videos came up, and that's how I found out he has a whole series. So I would watch some of the videos. And then, Einstein, I would look up Einstein changed his theory of relativity, and some videos and some stories. So a lot of this was firsthand accounts, because they actually have interviews with Einstein. So I'm not taking third-hand information. He talked about hoaxes in the evolution, in the theory, in the whole genre. And a lot of the hoaxes I looked up, well, these were scientists that were confirming that these things were told or thought to be true, but then they were not true. And then they would talk a lot about the hurdles that they were getting as far as evolution goes, about how the origins, specifically the origins, was a big piece of the puzzle that made me change my mind, that none of the scientists could explain the origins of life, the origins of the universe. They just say, well, you basically have to assume everything got going. And then they start trying to explain everything from there. So those were I would say maybe the biggest things that forced me to have to change my mind, because the information was coming from the scientific community. There was another big piece of the puzzle that had to do with the minimum, I can't remember the phrase he used, but there's a minimum number of things that you need for life to exist. And they started out thinking that maybe there were 2 or 3 of these things, but now they're up to maybe 200 of these things have to exist at the exact same time. And the chances of all these things creating themselves at the exact same time that will work together perfectly right on this planet is it's impossible. It's impossible that there would have to be a mind behind the creation. So then I ended up stumbling upon a theory that's called intelligent design. And are you familiar with that?
Yes, that we're created from a creator. I'm personally Christian, but I do know that other people have different paths and different beliefs, and then they still can be conservative or liberal. But I'm trying to get to your path, because I'm going
Right.
to push on that a little bit as you talk. But yes, intelligent design doesn't assign a creator. It doesn't say it's Jesus or Muhammad or whoever, but intelligent. It just say there is an intelligent being higher than us that caused everything else, that caused the cause and then the effect after that. So yes.
Correct. So that one was very interesting, because some of the stuff I was watching, it was strange that it was familiar to me. I have no idea why. I had never watched anything in this movement before, but there were people who literally were on the video on YouTube, and they were familiar to me, but I couldn't explain why. And later, it's like a memory came to me, and and then I remembered why was this particular guy familiar to me, and it was because the ACLU had a case. We had a case against teaching
Mhm.
intelligent design, and at the
Yes.
time, I thought, we won this case because we were right. But now the truth that I was seeing was that we were only half of the story was being presented. So I was shocked that it was so personal. What I was finding actually applied to my life. Everything that I was watching was connected to me. There was another strange video that I saw with another apologetics guy, Ray Comfort, and he was on a college campus interviewing people, asking them about intelligent design, asking them about creation, asking them about evolution. And I don't know why the school, wherever he was walking around, it looked familiar to me. Then I find out that that interview took place on a campus where I actually had taken classes. So it just kept being these weird series of confirmations that what I believed was wrong. Um, what's the hardest thing to do is to get somebody to admit that they're wrong. But that was my challenge, that I had to keep admitting I was wrong every time I got new information, that if I was going to be neutral and just look for the truth and not have a confirmation bias, not have a narrative that I was clinging to, just be willing to say, this is what's true. And everything can't be true at the same time. If something's true, you have to let go of what's not true.
Awesome. I wanted to go a little bit back to your college days and when you were saying about the indoctrination and everything. Did you see an alternative option, or were you completely surrounded by one worldview? Did you seem like you were consumed with more of the liberalism, the left-leaning ideology from your teachers, from your professors, from staff, or were there competing? Did you see anything pushing back against that and when you were in college at that time?
Because of where I was, I believe there was not competition, and it's because I come from the Midwest and I go to Los Angeles, so there was not a lot of competition. There may have been small amounts of people that I knew, maybe, but as far as the system goes, as far as the professors go, as far as the curriculum that you're being exposed to, as far as how they frame things in the textbooks, it's all biased. So if you are a believer and you are putting yourself or you're putting your child in that soup, you really are asking them to swim upstream. You're really asking them to have a lot of, if they're not prepared, I don't see how anyone's going to win. I had no idea that I was going to even be introduced to anything like this. So I didn't even know to have my guard up.
And I ask that because a lot of times right now we're seeing that we're having a cultural war going on and we see a lot of competing ideologies. And I just wanted to see if where you got your um, indoctrination, as you describe it, from, was there something else that you could see and then juxtapose it between the two, and you saying no, and the system was designed to set you up to have this worldview. And then
Yes,
when,
yes. I
so
would say
when
90%. 90% of it
90%.
was one way.
Okay, so when you started to have your doubts and started to do your research, did you feel some type of way as you were thinking back? Like, why wasn't I presented this information? Why was this information hidden from me? At least for me to decide for myself. Did you have those kind of thoughts and feelings?
I did. A lot of the things I was shocked. I was shocked that all this information was readily available, but it was never presented to me. So this is sort of what helps push me towards this, asking for us to build a new model of education. If we are in a government school system where all of the framework is designed by the same people who are indoctrinating you in college, you're not going to get the competing worldview. So you need to put yourself in a position where you're going to get the truth, and it's going to be built up in a way that you're going to be strengthened and fortified. And we don't have that right now.
Awesome. So as you were doing your research and as you were going through this, you were still a part of the ACLU. You were still working with them as this was going on.
Yeah, a lot of the time in the beginning, yeah.
And so as we're moving a little bit in your story, so you were going through this and you were going through this awakening, unraveling, as you put it. When do you find out is your defining moment where you're like, okay, something's up and I gotta change this, or this isn't working for me, or this has all been wrong? What would you pinpoint that happened for you?
A lot of it was I wasn't meshing on some issues anyway that didn't have anything to do with this trigger event. I wasn't meshing on some of the direction that we were going in. So I was already preparing to leave. It was already time to have a parting of the ways. So this was more like icing on the cake of now I understand more why I was having these stirrings where there wasn't agreement. I wasn't seeing that we were living, what we say we believe, because we're a non-political organization. So I shouldn't keep seeing the organization have a perspective that meshes with one of the political parties. If we're not willing to push back on both sides. And I was seeing that this conflict, there was this tug of war with other people in the organization that about things to me that had been settled. Our position on free speech, for example, that should be settled. We shouldn't be having a conversation about something that's been settled for 80 years. That the perspective was that all speech. We support all speech. All speech. We specifically support speech of the people you disagree with more. So if this person you disagree with is able to have free speech, then you're guaranteed that you'll be able to have free speech. My biggest example is a case that happened, well before I was even familiar with the organization. I believe in the 1970s or 80s, there was a very famous case that the ACLU was defending the KKK in Skokie, Illinois. And in that case, they wanted to march through a largely Jewish neighborhood. And people found it very offensive that the KKK would march through a neighborhood that was largely Jewish and had a big population of people who had survived the Holocaust. But again, the organization's perspective at the time, was more purist than I'm seeing right now, where you have to defend the fact that everybody gets access to free speech. That's what the Constitution is about. It cannot be about just supporting the speech of the people that you agree with. So you should be actually looking for opportunities to defend people you disagree with. And so that's what drew me to the organization. Right now, I am, I'm disappointed a lot.
So, tell us a little bit about how you broke apart from them and what you did after and how that led into where you are headed now.
Well, you just sort of go your separate ways. It's not like filing a divorce. But you at that point, I sort of was wrong on a lot of things. I was a very deflated person, and I had no idea that I would have a calling or anything. I just thought, what, I was wrong. I sort of just was returning back to the way I was raised. I was raised going to church and believing the Bible, so I had found a church, and then I was just working a regular job, and I was just going to live the rest of my life. But over time, I felt like I just started getting this calling about what happened to me. What would it have looked like for me to go to be educated in a way that would not have happened to me? So I got this calling into education, and it was more, supernatural. I just kept feeling like I was getting a word about this and a word about how it could work and what would it look like and how it would be structured and how would people be able to okay, the schools are failing, without a doubt, whether I had this experience or not. The urban core in America, every urban core in America, the schools are not working. One size fits all does not work for anything, particularly in a free market economy. So it started to just seem to me that if people wanted access to another type of education, particularly if you're a Christian and you want access to Christian education, what's the number one barrier? They just can't afford it. So if we focus on what can people do to be able to afford Christian education, can we build a new model of education that's going to work for more people? Then that's where we should be putting our energy. So I started putting my energy there. And I started working on this scholarship platform to help parents who want to be able to afford Christian education. So the great unraveling, that process that I was going through, it was very zigzag. I didn't know what I was doing, how I was doing it, who were going to be my new allies. I didn't have a clue. So at one point I sat down because I didn't know any conservatives. And I sat down and I was trying to figure out, what is conservatism? What does it even mean? And what are their issues? So I remember getting a pen and paper and a notebook and writing down conservative issues. I remember writing down pro-life. I remember I wrote down, small business, strong borders, fiscal responsibility. I wrote down things like American exceptionalism. I was trying to listen to more conservative news and find out, what's the path? What would it look like? Am I in the wrong party? Now I know it wasn't about a party, but that was just a clumsy way for me to get introduced to what it means. So I would go online and I would look up, some event. So one of the reasons I remember the year, and I say 2012 was the year that it started, because Ron Paul was running for president and he had those meetups. So I started going to some of these meetings. This is, conservatives, you can take this the best way. I would go to meetings on these different topics, and a speaker would stand up and they would start giving a report. That's what I called it. It's like they were reporters, and they would tell you everything that the left was doing. And I remember thinking, well, I already know what the left is doing. And then the meeting would adjourn. And I would walk to my car and I kept thinking, what's the plan? I would never know what we were supposed to be doing. I never got any strategic plan. I never knew anything that was like, how are we going to address this? How are we going to reverse what's going on? I know what you're up against. I just left what you're up against. And I kept thinking, they don't know what they're up against. The tiny, itty bitty effort that they were putting forward was no way going to be able to defeat the juggernaut that the left has built. And then I would get into these strange arguments with conservatives. I was thinking, why are they arguing with me?
Yeah, we on the same team, right?
I felt like I was on a soldier or a general in Hitler's army. I come over to the Americans and I tell them, I've been in the meetings. I can tell you where the the next thing they're going to do, and the strategic thought, the plans. And they would just tell me, nope, they already had a decision that was made. And I'm telling them, well, that's not going to work. And then, I'm very aggressive at sometimes with politics.
The right group of people. We have Coach Felicia and Sonny Johnson and Kira Davis. So it's a lot of strong-minded women on this side. So, and we push back on party politics a lot. So I think that's why I'm glad you joined me today. And I think that's how we met a little bit, because I was a little confused on your plan. But now that you explained it, I was like, oh, this is great, because what I wanted to tell you is the conscious conservative movement. We also are a media and an academy, and our visionary, Coach Felicia, is a former teacher, and she has a couple of degrees on her belt. And we also have Donique Royale, who just joined, and she is African American Studies at a high school. So we honor teachers, and we do support teachers, and there are conservative teachers out there, and teachers who are not so much focused on telling kids what to think or indoctrinating. So I love that's why I was like, oh, I got to get her on the show, because you got the fire that we have. You also have the love and the passion for teaching and schools and everything. And you also see that the conservatives are not understanding this big juggernaut. And one of the things I found interesting is that you went to school in Los Angeles, and then you went to the chapter in New York. And you were talking about how a lot of kids in these schools are failing in our cities. And one of our main points was always talking about these cities, but most conservatives now are telling people to run away from our cities. And you like, y'all just don't get it. That's where our fight is. And can you tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing as you've been trying to develop this model? I know you said that you went to these meetings and they didn't understand, but can you tell us more about how you've seen trying to go forward with your ideas?
Well, one of the things that's missing is just basic strategic planning. And the first thing you do when you're trying to draft a strategic plan is you literally sit down like baby steps. And I always ask people, what's your goal? But they can't even tell me what their goal is. So it took me a couple of years to even understand the disconnect that I was having. That it was, why am I arguing with conservatives all the time? And I just started asking very big picture questions, big picture. But to be honest with you, there's a large spirit of offense on this side. So it's difficult to build a coalition when people don't want to engage in difficult questions. And you being willing to say, it's not that your idea isn't good, but it's not the best idea. So let's just say we identify 10 goals. And Miss Pinky, she has a plan. And then I say, okay, we're going to take your plan and we're going to run it against our goals. So how does your plan get me to accomplish these 10 goals? And then we find out your plan resolves 3 of the goals. So it was not that it was a bad plan, but we only get 3. Okay. The next person's plan gets us to accomplish 5 of our goals. So now a neutral person would be able to say the person's goal that accomplishes 5 goals is the better plan. Now, no one should be offended because we all are committed to meeting these 10 goals. So when I ask people, okay, so what's your plan? And then I tell them, well, that's not going to get you where you're trying to go. You can't be committed to something that's not getting you where you're trying to go. But I find that people, a lot of conservatives are very committed to something that doesn't work. It's not working. I'll give you the perfect example. I talk to Christians and they tell me that Christian kids need to stay in the government schools because they need to be salt and light. Well, that's a fine plan, but then can you show me that that's working? No, you can't show me that that's working. Now, to be honest with you, the exact opposite is working. The Christian kids are being indoctrinated. You're not indoctrinating anybody. Your 5-year-old is not ministering to their friends. Your 12-year-old is not walking people through the sinner's prayer in the parking lot or on the playground. And if you can show me an example of maybe where it has worked, I would guarantee you that it's 99% the other way. So why would you be committed to something that's not working? And then again, I just want to be evidence-based. The proof is in the pudding. That's what they say. And then I will ask a very big picture question. I start with very big picture questions. I even give you a long-term view. If I give you 100 years, that's pretty long. None of us have been alive that long. So right now it's 2021. And I go back to the year 1921. Can you tell me one thing that you've reversed that liberals have done? Reversed. I can give you 100-year review. There's not been one. So it was not about elections. You didn't win on marriage. So in 1921, was there gay marriage? In 1921, no. So that means you won. You were in a winning position. You lost. Was there drag queen story hour in 1921? Nope. You lost. So did you have prayer in school in 1921? Yep. You don't have it now. You lost. Were the 10 Commandments in schools in 1921? Yep. You don't have them now. You lost. Was there Bible reading in school in 1921? You don't have it now. You lost. Was there anybody can get a divorce anytime in 1921? No, they could not. They can now. You lost. There is not one issue, not even one, that conservatives have won in 100 years. So why do you want to keep doing the thing that you've been doing?
I heard that was called insanity, but
Right. Did we have socialism that openly spoken about by major politicians? Nope. Did you have Obamacare? Nope. So instead of getting mad at me, I go to neutral issues and say, you give me the list. Now, I just presented you with facts that you're not disputing. So you show me where you had a win. If you have had 0 wins in 1 century, you might want to do something different. So what I'm asking for is a revolutionary change. Conservatives, they do what I call nibble around the edges. You don't want to nibble around the edges. I am calling for the building of a completely new model of education, something that we have never seen before. I like to give big picture information. I always say that. So, and these are things that conservatives have to start getting on lock. Okay. There should be 5 to 10 issues or statements that you know cold. One of them is there are 99,000 government schools in America and 330,000 churches. 99 versus 330,000. These church buildings sit empty 90% of the time. So everyone that sees this show, I'm going to challenge you for the next week. When you're just driving around, I don't know what city you live in. When you're driving around on a random Wednesday, a random Tuesday, a random Friday, you're going to see churches on every other block. I want you to look at that church building and you're going to notice it's completely empty. There's no one in there. If it's Monday at 10 a.m., there's nobody in that church. It's completely empty. Why is that church not a school? Why is that church not a homeschool co-op? So you're fighting a culture war, but you're fighting it in their buildings, with their teachers, with their curriculum, with their rhetoric, with their marketing, with their branding. When you can move them into your space, now you have control of hiring, you have control of curriculum, you have control of staff, you have control of location. I've never met a group of people that didn't want to be in control. They want to be backseat drivers. And I keep saying, well, why don't you drive? Parents are begging for an alternative for their children to get out of these failing schools. They know that they're not going to march their way into wealth. You're not going to riot your way into wealth. But if we were building our own schools, I have a 2-tier marketing message. I have the larger American message, okay, that the entire country is not being served by our kids being in failing schools. But when I have targeted messaging opportunities to the Black community, and I bring up HBCUs were built, the first one in 1835, I believe. This is 30 years before slavery ended. They already had built the first Black college. So we can piggyback off of that success. We have HBCU colleges. Why are we not building HBCUs K through 12? What does that look like? K through 12 HBCUs. So if you are a person that believes that America is systemically racist, which I don't believe that, but if you do believe that, you should still be on the same page with me, because Malcolm X said that only a fool would allow his enemy to educate his children. So you're telling me that everybody is a white supremacist. So you put your children with white supremacists all day? You told me every system in America is inherently racist. So why do you put your children in a system that's inherently racist? Where 85% of all government teachers are white females. Are you telling me that Malcolm X would put his children in a school with 85% white female teachers? And then he would say, I trust her to dismantle the system. Why would she dismantle the system that pays her? She is paid to maintain the system. Her husband most likely gets benefits from the system. Her children will benefit from this system. And you're telling me that that's going to be her job. Her mission field is to dismantle the system that she gets benefits from. That's an exercise in the ridiculous. That's why I don't support CRT. That's why I don't support the failing schools. They don't go far enough. CRT is controlled opposition. I'm not going to put the enemy in charge of dismantling the system. I'm not going to put the enemy in charge of demoralizing their own children. That makes no sense. The only people that are going to be demoralized in the class with CRT is going to be Black kids. I call it the Black Demoralization Project.
Yes, we have our Professor Donique. She says, "How are you going to tell me that I'm oppressed and did tell me everything white is great and amazing and supremacy and everything? Now you telling me that I'm the one that's That's what's crazy. But
It makes no sense because I'm going to be demoralized. If you talk to any people who are at the top of their game, it doesn't matter what race it is. They could be the top scientist. They could be the top athlete. They can be the top teacher. You're going to figure out really quickly the people who are running the business world, any topic. The people at the top will tell you it's a mind game. It's not that they're not better than another person. They have to get their mind in a certain position every day, a mental discipline. And you're going to put my kid at age 5 years old, from 5 to 18, telling them that they are negative, negative, negative. Everything bad looks like you. And then you're going to expect when he's 18 that he's going to be able to believe that he can do anything. No, that makes no sense.
I always say make it make sense. So you telling me that this system is oppressive? You telling me the foundation of this country is racist? You're telling me that everything is out to get me as a black woman, whatever to whatever. But yet we giving all of our power, our kids, our money, everything over to the same said system.
Exactly. And then what I find once I give that pushback, the same people who just told me everything was bad, everything, and I asked them, I'm like, okay, are you saying this? Are you saying everything is white supremacist? Yes. Are you saying everything is inherently racist? Yes. Are you saying that this person, I can't trust white people because secretly they believe that they're better than me, and that they secretly, no matter how great I think they are, that they are technically always oppressors no matter what? Yes. Okay. I just want to make sure I have a good understanding of what you believe. Based on what you believe, you should be executing my plan. You should be executing the plan. You should be ahead of me in line. And they will turn around and start defending the government schools. I'm in shock. It happens all the time. And test this out. If you know people who
I
believe
know.
this, you know, because I see you on Twitter.
Where the low income kids gonna eat, or where they're gonna go, where their parents are working 2 jobs. You know,
I'm telling them where they're going to go. They're going to go in this new HBCUs K through 12 that I'm saying that we need to build. Now, you want to have all the investment in the white system. You want to put all of the money. Do you understand that the schools are economic engines? Look up how much money your school district takes in. My school district takes in about $248 million a year. Is that money being transferred? Even if it's an urban school district, is that money being transferred into the people that live in that district? No. So if again, you're the person telling me that everything is inherently white supremacist. So $248 million a year disappears and gets transferred from the taxpayers into white hands, largely white hands. And I'm saying, well, why don't we move that money and transfer it into black hands? And then those same people start arguing with me. So between them arguing with me, the liberals and the conservatives, I'm just perplexed all the time.
But when God has a calling on you, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. When He told Jonah to go into the city, Jonah didn't want to go.
No.
He was like, "No, you know what happened with that story." So yeah, I had something on you, because you don't know how many times I don't wanted to shut all this down. So I just love that you say that. I feel it's funny because I feel that fire and that passion that's what I have too. But then you go to the side that you feel like supposed to be like the conservative side, and you're like, y'all don't understand, and you feel like you're shaking them. And I do feel like I feel a shift, because I do see some, people are going to the school boards, and people are trying
this last year.
I feel like I'm being a bad guy on the internet, because a lot of people saying, oh my God, my kids are learning this. And I'm like, you didn't know?
Yes, the last year.
Going on at your child's school. Like, even I just joined the PTO because I'm like, what is going on do I even know? So
now think about it, Nicole.
Go ahead.
Now think about this. If there's 99,000 government schools, how many rooms are in each one of those buildings? There's no way you're going to know what's going on. There's no way you're going to know. I'm a huge advocate of a new movement that I actually found out about on Twitter called Cameras in the Classroom. I really hope conservatives pick that issue up and start hammering that issue, because this has been eye-opening for a lot of parents this last year, for them to actually see what the teachers are teaching their kids. People didn't know. They just had blind trust. And that's over. So now over 20 states have passed school choice legislation. So even though 2020 was a nightmare, particularly for people who, are the freedom and the patriot movement, it's just been a nightmare. But the silver lining has been that parents have become awakened, and now they are making demands on their government about the quality and the level of education that the K through 12 kids are getting.
What are you seeing as the need right now to get more focus on your model, on your design? What are you seeing is still lacking? Not just, I mean, people are interested and people are ready, but there's still something missed. What do you think is missing, or what do you think is dragging people's feet? Is it fear? Is it not knowing? What do you think it is?
A lot of it is just vision. With me, starting to hear from the Lord more, and still being weird every time it happens, but it comes through with such a clarity. So at one point, the Lord specifically asked me, he said, my people perish for a lack of
Knowledge.
and that's what I said. And then he said, that word also means vision. And I said, oh. And then he said, they can't imagine not having a government school system. So what I'm up against is a lack of vision. If this is all we know, all you know is that you put your little kid on a bus at age 5, and then they take the bus until they're 18. That's all we know. So we literally have to find the people who are the visionaries and work with them and build a model for people to see what it looks like. For what does HBCU K through 12 look like? Once people see what something looks like, it's not foreign, it's not scary to them, more people will be able to get on board. But right now, as you guys are cutting edge. For you guys to be Black, female, conservative women that are out here on social media, out here hitting it hard every day, challenging the narrative. And who are you challenging the narrative with? Other conservatives, for the most part. So you have to go into your own tribe and turn them upside down. I'm fine with that, because I'm feeling called to beat down conservatives for the most part. To go
Yeah,
and tell them this ain't working. You got to let go of the reins. The old people who are old thoughts, the ones that I say, what have you won in the last 100 years? Nothing. So that means you need to sit down. You shouldn't be driving, because you've earned, you should be fired. Right now, I got conservatives telling everybody that Biden should be fired. I agree. Kamala should be fired. I agree. Pelosi should be fired. The State Department should be fired. I completely agree. And you should be fired too, because this happened on your watch. This happened on your watch, and you have zero capacity to come up with a strategic response to what they do. So I was looking at Maria Bartiromo a few weeks ago, and she was interviewing a conservative, a Republican, Marsha Blackburn. And Marsha was giving that traditional response, the traditional Republican response. And I just felt like Maria got a fire lit under her. You guys should go watch this segment. And she said, then why are they winning? Why are the liberals winning? Why are the Democrats winning? They get everything they want. And here you are giving me this same old platitudes. That's done. That's done. So the Bible says judgment begins at the house of the Lord. So he's going to start with his own people. We need to be cleaning house with the conservatives, the patriots, the libertarians, and telling these people, one, I believe they're in on it. And I say that openly every day. They are not stupid. They're in on it. They're working together. And those people need to be identified, and they need to be removed. And that's how it needs to start. You need to be talking to your own pastor. Don't keep telling you that the government schools are failing your kid. You get up every Sunday and you go to church. You need to approach your pastor and say, is there any reason why we don't have a school? We have buildings. America was founded on one-room schoolhouses. One room. And they had all the different grades in one room. And they were able to build a country where we invented television, radio, airplanes, internet. Everything was invented. And these people that built it, that built hospital systems, built railroad systems, built cars and highways, they went to one-room schoolhouses. So if we have churches, don't we have flat screen TVs that we can put on the walls and bring in the internet, buy some books, and start teaching these children and stop leaving them in the hands of the enemy? No, nobody's asking them to.
It's like we're not at the art of war, and that's why it seems like, that they're the ops or something, because what they're helping the other side win. And this is not just a fight for us individuals, is a fight for our communities, is a fight for our country and our souls too, because we also have a calling us higher than that, but we can't get to that yet until we're trying to do this other things. Do you have a final message that you want to get out, for what you're trying to do, and for what you would like to see, say, the next 5 to 10 years in this
Yeah,
area?
definitely. The 5 to 10 year plan, it's twofold. One of them, I got that plan right after I had the unraveling and everything became a little clearer to me. As I addressed earlier, that one of the big problems that I just kept getting the feedback was parents just saying, well, I would, but I can't afford private school. I can't afford it. Obviously, that's a theme that people can relate to. I would give a little pushback to them and say, well, we need to talk about what it means to be able to afford things. And some of that is we have to go restructure our lives. So I do believe that the average middle class family in America, especially a 2-parent family, that they could afford private school. But you may not get it and have a McMansion. You may not get it and have your BMWs. You may have to drive your cars 10, 12, 15 years. You know what I call a car payment? Tuition.
Mm.
That's your tuition. You're driving your tuition. So when your car payment ends, I tell people, hey, take that $400-500 a month and now transfer that to a tuition payment. So eating out, guess what that's tuition. Living, maybe you have a 4-bedroom house. Maybe you should have a 3-bedroom house, and then your kids would share a room, but you'd have money for tuition. So people have more money than they think they have if you really went through someone's budget. And that's a personal choice. People are going to have to go personally decide to make this commitment. And 2020 has propelled a lot of parents to go ahead and make that decision. So I'm applauding them. Number 2 is the I was given a plan. So remember I said, I kept asking, what's the plan? What's the plan? So at a certain point I was given a plan, and the plan revolves around scholarships. How do we finance a HBCU K through 12 system? And all the schools that I would work with wouldn't have to be Black schools, but in general,
The model. Mm-hmm.
the model. I just feel like there's a lot of power if we were specifically the Black community trying to build that and bringing a lot of diverse voices together, because even people I know that are liberals would love to see HBCUs K through 12. And when I was reading through President Trump's Platinum Plan, I actually thought that plan was a great foundation that could be transformed into this plan to build K through 12 education, and that's actually a form of reparations. So we have a lot of conversations that are going on, but they're not being connected. They're not, because no one's thinking strategically. So, for example, I'm gonna drill down on that reparations word, because that's a word that conservatives don't like. I call it the R word, but I bring it up. I'm not afraid of any word. I'm not afraid of anything. I tell people, you start with your goals. If you have a certain goal, now I can take this, and reparations becomes a tool for me to meet my goal. So if Black people in America are saying that they want reparations, obviously you're not going to get 40 acres and a mule. That is reparations from 1865. What does 21st century reparations look like? I explain to people that it looks like HBCUs K through 12. And let me tell you why. Because 40 acres and a mule was a one-time payment, right? You're going to get your 40 acres. I mean, I hate to tell Black people, but the chances of your family still having that 40 acres from 1865 is slim to none. They probably had 4, 5, 6 kids in 1865. They would have divided it up 20 years later, and everybody would have had maybe 10 acres. 20 years later, they would have divided that up again, and then people would have had 2.5 acres. 20 years later, they would have divided that up again, and you wouldn't even have a postage size stamp of land yet left. Now, not that everybody would have gotten rid of theirs, but for the most part, most people, no matter what color you are, do not have assets from 150 years ago. But if you take that idea, the concept of the reparations, and you translate that into the HBCU K through 12, you now get what I call permanent reparations, because children are going to have to keep going to school. Then there's going to be another generation of kids going to school. So in the states that are moving towards vouchers, think of that as a coupon. Now the Black community has the power to pool all of those coupons. We have infrastructure. So when I identify the 330,000 churches that sit empty 90% of the time, 85,000 of those buildings are Black churches. So we have 85,000 buildings that are sitting empty 90% of the time. Now you can take those coupons, pool them, go into that church building, get your flat screen TVs. Now you have a revenue source. With that revenue, we take the concept of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept, it's called bouncing your money. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I'm going to say that I learned that from somebody else. I had never heard that concept before, but it's Dr. Claude Anderson. So look him up, Dr. Claude Anderson, and he talked about the concept of bouncing your money. So the way to measure wealth in a community is you look at how much their money bounces. So think of a dollar like a dollar bill like a ball. So if I'm in the Black community and I get a dollar bill, who do I spend that money with? I need to bounce that money to you. So now you're using the dollar bill. So I handed it off to another Black person. And then you hand it off to another Black person. And the more times that bounces in your community is a way to measure your wealth. Well, apparently his numbers show him that the Black community, we bounce our money. Guess how many times?
Once.
0. The minute we get money, it's transferred right back out of the community. And so what he said, the most successful group in America are Jewish people. They bounce their money, I'm pretty sure I have the number right, but you can double check, 18 times. So Jewish people are the wealthiest people on the globe. But if this is a concept that we could learn. So now if you have the money that gets transferred to you in a tuition payment, and I take that money, now I hand it off to the Black teacher at that school, right? So now I just bounce that money. So now if I take the money and I say, now we're in charge of our own curriculum, right? So now I can buy from Black-owned curriculum companies. I just bounce that dollar again. So if I say, well, we have to feed the kids, right? So we're going to hire people to come in to make the food. Okay, we just bounce that money again and handed that off to a person in the community that comes in and makes the food. So does this make sense that, okay, now we need some people to supply uniforms for the school. Okay, so we can bounce that to a Black-owned business that built the school. So now we have to put money in the bank, right? Because we got to pay our staff. So now we bounce that money to a Black-owned bank. So now through one building, we've built a system that is designed to bounce the money, to keep holding the wealth and keeping it in the community. So does that make sense that this is why that's a great tool, but we have to be strategic. If we're not being strategic and we're not setting our goals and trying to meet those goals, so now should I teach children who are not literate when they graduate, when they just went to HBCU K through 12? There's no excuse for that. Should I have a whole bunch of children that are pregnant at age 14, 15, 16, 17? Not when I had control of training them. So now all of these issues that conservatives are complaining about, those should start going away. So now, are they going to be able to take the Bible out of a building that's an actual church? Well, no. Are they going to be able to take the 10 Commandments out? Well, no. So all of the issues that you are complaining about will be addressed through one policy. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get a 100%, but you're going to get a lot. Now, can you make parents come in and volunteer at the school? Yes.
Yes, their church.
Yeah, because now it's a private school and the parents are selecting you, and you can say, well, this is a part of the way the school works, that you're required to volunteer. So now are you able to come in and influence the parents and help them with their parenting issues? You know, a lot of times we have children that are on the school to prison pipeline. Well, if I'm building the school, I'm not going to have a school to prison pipeline, right? So our whole list of issues can be resolved by this one policy shift. And so now we have children that are Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. So right now we have a whole strategy that's all about repairing broken people instead of, well, the person wasn't broken when they were 5. So why don't we just take control of the children from the beginning? Another thing that I like to tell conservatives, liberals, everybody, the government does not love you. I would think that would be obvious. The government does not love you, nor do they love your children. I don't even know if that's their job to do it, but I know they don't do it. So why would I put my children with people who don't love them when we can have an option to put them with people who do love them?
Awesome. That's so great. And I love bringing solution oriented people onto my show because that's what we're about at the Conscious Conservative Media and Academy. We're training people, we're teaching people to have actual plans and to have actual strategies. Miss Pinky Thoughts is just my thoughts on how we can have a better I say work ethic or society by coming together and collaborating with so many people. So I'm so glad that you were able to join me today, and we were able to I was actually understand your concept, and it is wonderful. It's way you talking about vision. That's definitely a vision. That's way more than what I was thinking. You were discussing. I guess Twitter sometimes on social media it's hard to actually,
Right.
you know,
144 characters.
yeah, it's hard to actually get your idea out there. And even if we just started with the Black community, that would just be great. But I can just see this changing tremendously if you count all the Catholic churches, all the different churches, and even, other religions come take the model too. I mean, just the freedom of it is what, made America great. So we're trying to make it great again. You know what I'm saying? That's where, solutions come in. So thank you again for joining me. Do you have any pluggables or anything you would like to put out for yourself?
Just follow me on Twitter. I'm Watson Speaking on Twitter. And a piece of this plan, I plan to have it actually launched by the end of the year. So I'll circle back with you when I can actually point you to something that's very concrete that people will be able to start signing up for.
Awesome. That would be so great. And I would definitely love to collaborate with you if you have a chance to go over to the Media Network and just sign up. It's free thanks to all of our sponsors. And if anybody wants to donate, the information is over at FeliciaKillings.org/donate, or you can just find it on the main page. Thank you again so much for joining us on. This was a new episode of Ms. Pinky Thoughts. And I thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.